Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is a very small case. I've actually not seen another video on this person on YouTube. It's very difficult to find a lot of information about it, but to me it's also one that's very obviously involving foul play. So I can't wait to see what you guys have to say about this. Today's video is on Joseph Skylar Burnley. He went by Sky for short. He was 27 years old and he went missing Friday, June 3rd, 2016 in Pearl, Mississippi. So Sky took care of his 92-year-old grandmother. He usually never left the house or went anywhere without having someone else who could take care of her or without giving her an exact time that he would be back. He told her when he left that he was going to hang out with a couple of friends, but this time I don't think he directly stated when he was going to be back. He went over to the home of Amanda Morris and Travis Brewer. They also had their 4-year-old daughter, and he spent the night, and the next morning they discovered that their truck had been stolen along with Travis Brewer's phone. This happened shortly before 10 a.m. 10 a.m. is when they supposedly went to search, but they didn't report it missing. Brewer claimed it had been taken by a friend, and it wasn't really clear to me if this was something normal that happened, if this friend frequently used this car, but they said it almost as if it was a casual thing that they weren't too concerned about. They just needed to go and find it. So all of them, Travis, Amanda, Sky, and the 4-year-old daughter, all hopped into a vehicle and had an app on phone that located the pings of the cell phone. Travis claimed that his cell phone was inside of his vehicle at the time, and by tracking the pings, they could locate the truck. The pings ended up leading them to a very remote area, at least in my opinion, near Brandon, Mississippi off of Bridges Road, where apparently they parked the vehicle, left Amanda and the 4-year-old daughter in the car, and Travis and Sky left the car to go search the woods for the truck and the stolen phone. This is where things get a little bit strange to me. For some reason, they decided to split up. Now, I am very familiar with how locating a phone works. I've done it through Find My iPhone before. I've done it through a couple of other apps, and it generally takes you to the exact location. I mean, it may not say what blade of grass the phone is laying on, but for something like a truck and it being inside of a truck, I don't quite understand why they would have needed to split up. And it'll get even more confusing further into the story. Shortly after, Travis Brewer returned back to the vehicle they had all come in, and Sky was nowhere to be found, so they waited a few minutes, and once the daughter and Amanda got too hot since the car did not have any air conditioning, he had no choice but to leave, take them home, and return to look for Sky. When he returned to look for Sky, I think he spent around 45 minutes to an hour searching for him, and then at 2 p.m. he actually found his truck. He said it was located on Highway I-20, which was not even maybe half a mile to a mile, and this is just my guess based off looking at a map, north of Bridges Road, where they had originally been searching for the truck. However, it wasn't until 1 a.m., 15 hours later, that they decided to call the police, and their first thing that they said was, "Hey, I had my truck go missing. I found it though, but by the way, we can't find Sky." It wasn't really a call with much concern over where Sky was or that he hadn't turned back up. It was more of a, "Hey, just wanted to let you know that my truck went missing," almost like a safety measure, and I'll get into that in a little bit.
Skylar Burnley was last seen at a gas station near the Pearl-Brandon line on June 3rd, 2016.
Also informed them that Sky had left everything in the vehicle. He left his shirt, he left his phone, he left his cigarettes. When he got out of the car to search for the stolen truck and phone, he left every single thing behind him. So Brewer told them they had no way to contact him.
Knowing that Sky's gone is one thing, but not being able to find him and not being able to put things to rest is hard on any family. If you've heard anything or know anything, please contact Crime Stoppers or MBI.
A search was immediately held that following Saturday. They searched all day long until 11 p.m. These people ran grids. If you're not familiar with what that is, they are a very highly trained search and rescue team, and when you run grids, it's to make sure you cover every single bit of land possible, and they searched over 400 acres and couldn't find him. Their original theory was that he possibly went out to look for this truck, got injured, and since it was such a large area, there was no no way Travis Brewers was able to locate him. And once again, being that his 4-year-old daughter was in a very hot vehicle, they had no choice but to leave. And when he came back, there was just no possible way he could find him.
Investigators say the 27-year-old was helping friends look for a stolen vehicle when he disappeared.
Their only stipulation to this was that this certain plot of land he supposedly went missing on or near was surrounded on all 4 sides with either roads or trails. So if someone did happen to get lost in this area, they would eventually stumble across one of these roads. Yet he was not showing up anywhere. He wasn't showing up back home. He was never seen using a payphone to contact anyone. No one in the area had seen him. So he had to have been in this area, except even when cadaver dogs were brought in, they couldn't locate him. This was when they came up with the conclusion that there was no possible way he was still in this specific area. So the police decided to question Brewers and Morris a couple of times, and this questioning led them to believe that it might not be a missing persons case, but it might possibly be a murder. During their questioning, there were a lot of concerns that were raised. I watched an interview where they wouldn't necessarily call it discrepancies, but there were a couple of red flags raised. Warrants were put out for all of their phones to search for possible information, and they were sent off to a forensic lab for testing to see what was inside of them, any information that could possibly lead to anything that would show signs of anyone wanting to get rid of Sky. Police also decided to search Brewer and Morris's home, and when they did the search, they found paraphernalia, drugs, and they actually ended up in jail on the 5th, and their daughter was placed into DHS. Matthew McCoy was the man and friend who supposedly took Brewer's truck. They also questioned him. I was not able to find any information on him, which I found very interesting. They didn't really say if they ruled him out or if he was still a possible suspect in the case, but they did say they questioned him just short hours afterwards. I don't know if maybe he came forward or if they found him. And something happened that really, especially to me and to the police, throws off this entire story. They ended up finding Brewer's phone. Except it was not in his truck that had been stolen. It was actually in the grass just a very short distance from his home. Immediately, the police knew there was something very wrong going on here. There were already so many concerning things the couple had said in their interviews. And police started to believe that the whole story that they were tracking this cell phone was a complete fabrication. As far as I know, they do have the phone, but I was not able to see if anything so far has come of it. I do know recently in this case there was a 3rd arrest. However, yet again, this is still so fresh that they won't release any information. I have no idea who this person is. It is a 3rd person, so it is someone other than the couple, and they believe this person has something to do with the disappearance and possible murder of Sky. This is all of the information in this case, and it's really not a lot because a lot of the cases that I do often have a lot of time to just kind of gather and build more information. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about the very strange things that I see in this case. There's not really any good solid theories that have a lot of things backing them, but there are some very alarming things that I immediately noticed right off the bat. As I mentioned before, they left the house with the intentions of tracking these phone pings because the phone was inside of the truck. They went separate ways, and we also learned later on in the case that Sky actually left his phone inside the vehicle. So how was he trying to find this truck without having his phone to possibly track Travis's phone? I don't really understand the idea of splitting up in this case. I don't understand why they would want to be separated unless there was a very specific reason. That brings me to the fact that the phone was possibly not ever in the truck. So what exactly were they tracking, or were they just putting on a show? When he called and said that he found his truck, he claimed everything was still in it, so why would he lie about the fact that his phone was gone, especially when it seems like such an important part in this entire case? It's the reason why they left the house to begin with. It's what they were tracking to find the truck. So how did they know to go to a location that was very, very close to where the truck was found without this phone being there for pings? And that's probably the strangest thing to me in this entire case. This couple is claiming to be following this track of where their phone is. It later is found out that the phone's not there, but somehow they still managed to search in the right spot just a couple miles away from where their truck was actually found. So that leads me into the theory that this was all a setup by the couple. So they knew he was coming over that weekend. They were involved in some pretty serious drug activity. Police officers do think they had something to do with the drug trade. I don't know if maybe Sky could have possibly threatened that or threatened to say something about it. He seemed to be a genuinely very caring person. Maybe he was concerned for the daughter. You know, he had absolutely no history of a criminal record. He had no history of mental health issues, no history of being involved in very large drugs. So maybe he stood up for something that he thought was wrong and it threatened them. The idea is that morning they had Matthew McCoy come and take the car and drop it off in a very specific location. That's where this third person comes in handy. So this third person, people think, is someone else that they got to drive to the location where they would eventually end up while looking for these pings. They obviously had to have someone drop the stolen vehicle off. That vehicle obviously couldn't be used for evidence reasons to take Sky anywhere, so they had to have this third person involved. So the theory says that they woke up, all of this was staged. They knew that Sky was a good guy, so they knew that he would help, and they all piled in the car to make sure all of them were there, so it seemed like all of them were innocent, drove out to this already pre-planned place, and when they got out of the car, this is why they separated. People think that Brewers separated them to essentially push him directly in the path of this third person that was waiting to take him. Sky left his phone in the car, and it's already known that Brewer didn't have his phone because it was supposedly in the vehicle. So why would they split up? Maybe he had his wife's phone, but still in this case, why wouldn't they stay together to follow the pings? If you're looking for something based off of the phone's location, you would need your own phone to track it. So why would he send him off knowing he had no way of tracking it? So I'm going to go ahead and put up a kind of map view of the area. So this is the area that they were in. As you can see, it's right by the highway where the truck was found. You can also see that there's only like 1 or 2 houses, and then if I zoom out a little bit, there's a small cluster of houses kind of far away, and then if I zoom out even more, you'll see that this is pretty barren land. There are no houses really, there are not many roads, it seems to be just a bunch of dirt trails. So the idea is that someone went and hid on one of these roads, one of these trails, and when Sky was essentially pushed in that right direction, he stumbled across this person who threw him in the car and left with him. It makes sense in a couple different areas. Obviously, Brewer wanted to split up to make it look like he had nothing to do with it. He went back to his wife, he went back to his child, had no choice but to leave. And then he came back and he looked and found nothing. Obviously, they would need someone to take this stolen truck and place it somewhere. And then once again, for evidence reasons and to maintain their own innocence and look like it was just a disappearance, they had a third person involved. So this leads us to the phone being found right beside Brewer's house. This already immediately says there is absolutely no way they were actually tracking these pings. They specifically went to this location for a reason. As far as I've seen, they have no excuses as to why the phone ended up here. If they were tracking this phone like they say they were, they would have ended up right outside their front door essentially. So why would they have done this if it wasn't something that was just planned? So people who are questioning this theory are wondering if maybe the phone could have been there the entire time and maybe he found it and then just dumped it accidentally or dropped it outside of his house. Since there are really no articles or statements saying that he for sure found his phone in the car or, you know, anything along those lines, we can't really say or determine if he had it and accidentally dropped it. So a lot of people think that the phone was tossed so it wasn't found inside of the home or anywhere directly and on the property. It's a whole big confusing mess to me, but it seems like something is very, very off with this story. However, this is also a really hard story for me to talk about and kind of speculate on because there really is not enough information. The police have kept a lot to themselves, which is 100% understandable in these cases. But I just keep going back to the fact that they tracked this phone through this app, yet the phone was found days, I think even 2 weeks, up to 2 weeks later, right by their home. Did they toss it to get rid of evidence? Did they lie about finding the phone that way, which leads everyone to believe it was a setup? There's really no telling, but the way that this police department is handling it, it seems to me they have got this case completely under control. There are a few interviews where they came out and asked the public for help. The last time he was ever seen was on surveillance footage that morning at about 9:45, I think, at a gas station, and after that, there has not been a single thing of him. So for anyone watching this who is possibly from the area or possibly has any information, the morning he went missing, he was wearing a yellow button-down shirt, he was wearing blue jeans and a baseball cap. Any little bit of information obviously will help. So if you have any information, contact the Crime Stoppers number or the police department number that I have in my description box. And let me know what you guys think down below. To me, this does scream foul play. Even the reasonings behind that are kind of interesting and hard to explain. The phone throws the entire story off, but it could also lead it in so many different directions. I mean, I don't understand why they think he would have just walked off in this scenario. Had they been just hanging out at his house, I could totally see that. People just decide to leave sometimes and go without saying anything. But for someone to honestly believe, especially a friend, that, you know, their friend just wandered off in the middle of the woods in a very remote area, I just don't understand that, and I don't see how anyone could assume that. I mean, 15 hours is a long period of time. They weren't concerned in that entire 15 hours. Like, if I walked into the woods with one of my friends and came out without them, I would be in a total state of panic. I would be freaking out, immediately call the cops. I know we're all adults, but even if I did it now as an adult, I would still be highly concerned. You know, this going out to help them and mysteriously disappeared, that just screams foul play. That screams that something is wrong, whether it was the friends or just some person who maybe owned that property, or maybe he stumbled upon someone's property in that little group of houses. I've got no idea. So let me know what you think down below. This case is a very interesting one and it has almost no publicity. So I'm so excited to be doing a video to shed light on this case. As always, leave me a huge thumbs up. It helps me so much. Check me out on all of my social media sites. I love talking to you guys there, especially on Snapchat. My Snapchat fam is so strong. You guys, you bring me joy all the time. Thank you, thank you, thank you for your continuous support. These cases would not get this sort of publicity without you guys. My channel has grown at an exponential rate, and these people are getting 40 to 80,000 views on their stories. That's insane. That is so many people learning about these cases who might potentially know something, and I will forever be grateful for it. But on that note, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and join the family, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.